10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 311. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 311 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. My name is Nick Manella. If you are new to the show, welcome in. And of course, if you're a returning listener, welcome back. This week, we are going to finish up our series on learning tunes. We're going to kind of wrap things up, review everything that we've talked about, and just give you some general ideas on a little bit more of a meta level to send you out into the world to learn every single jazz standard that you've ever wanted to learn. But of course, as always, before we jump into the show, just wanted to let you know that this is a listener-supported podcast, which means we do not have any advertisements on the show. Instead, we rely on listeners like you to support us with a small donation every single month. And for that donation, you do get a PDF and audio examples with every single episode. And there's quite a back catalog now of over 310 episodes waiting for you on the other side of that donation. We do use the Patreon platform for our donations. So if you want to check it out and become a member of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson family, go over to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today. Quick shout out to two new patrons this week. Thank you to our new $3 patron, Martin, and our new $5 patron, Gordon. Welcome to the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson family, and of course to the over 350 supporters we have over there, some of which have been with us for years at this point. Thank you so much. We cannot do this show without you. So again, that's 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners. Get yourself signed up for instant access. Okay, so at this point in the series, we've really talked about everything technical that goes into learning a tune. We've talked about all the preliminary legwork that you need to do. We've talked about all of the listening. What should you learn by ear? Hint, almost everything. And what should you rely on a book for? We've put things in multiple keys. We've talked about melody. We've talked about chord changes. We've talked about exercises that you can do over every single chord change. We've covered a lot of stuff. So what I want to do in this final episode of the series is just leave you with some general knowledge after doing all of that technical stuff. How do you continue to get better? Because I think it's really important to realize that once you have learned a tune, the journey doesn't end there. I think there's this temptation to get done with a tune, move on to the next one, and kind of, okay, my head is in a completely different space, a different set of changes. But I got to tell you, the biggest payoff when it comes to being a better improviser and being able to really, really play great solos is that after you've learned the tune and you have it memorized, that's just the beginning. You need to keep playing over that tune for months and even years to really get to the ideal level of fluidity and really be able to express yourself over a certain set of chord changes. So the first piece of advice I have for you is that there is no substitute for repetition. So the tunes that I feel like I sound the best on and that I'm the most confident in when it comes to playing them on stage are the tunes that I've played the most. And that is without exception. There are a certain set of tunes that I just feel so comfortable on. I don't have to think about the changes. I don't have to think about anything technical. I literally feel like I could just straight up express myself over these tunes. And without a doubt, they're the tunes that I've been playing for the longest and the tunes that I've played over the most. And the cool part about this aspect of playing over tunes is that there's literally no science behind it, right? If you know the changes, you know how to get around them, you've done those exercises that we talked about last week, you know the melody, the thing you have to do to become really, really good at playing over that tune is play it more. I'm talking like hundreds, maybe even thousands of times. And to tell you the truth, that's like the really fun part for me, is just playing over these tunes over and over and over again and seeing my level of fluency and my level of familiarity with the tune go up with every single repetition. Now, let's face it, if you don't have fun just improvising over these tunes, you're in the wrong business. You're doing the wrong thing. So this should really be the fun part. You've gotten all the hard work out of the way, all that legwork, all that memorization that you had to do. It's done. Now all you need to do is play over and over and over and over again. Your ears are going to get better at hearing those changes. Your fingers are going to become more fluent in the key that it's in and the certain set of changes. And this is really, really where the payoff happens. Okay, so repetition is number one. Number two is that listening is just as important as ever right now, okay? We did all of that preliminary listening to learn the melody, to maybe try to learn some of the changes if you're at that point, but don't stop listening now, because here's the thing. Now you really know what's going on with the tune, and you are a very, very informed listener. So what I do is I keep on those playlists of my favorite artists playing this particular tune, and I will double down on listening to them. But this time, I really know the harmony that's going on in the background, and I understand a lot more about the tune. So don't think that the listening was just something that you had to do up until this point. You are going to get so much more out of the listening at this point because you really know the tune. So those are my two kind of bigger concepts, right? Like things to think about going forward on whatever tune it is that you're currently learning or currently working on, all right? Once the process of actually memorizing and learning is over, it's all about repetition and listening. The fun stuff. And I really, really do think this is fun, and you should be having a blast doing this. Okay, so what I wanted to finish up the episode with is to give you some concrete ideas on what you can do when you start doing that repetition. Okay, as you keep playing over these tunes over and over again, you might want to do some things that are going to have you approach the tune and the chord changes in a bit of a different way. Right? Because ultimately we want to develop a lot of flexibility and a lot of confidence over this particular set of chord changes. These next ideas that I'm going to give you and demonstrate to you are just actual real life things that you can bring with you into the practice room when you're going to play through the chord changes, 10 times in a row. You could think about some of these ideas while you're doing that. So I've got 4 ideas for you, and I want to demonstrate each one of them. Now, I'm going to use one of my favorite tunes from the 1930s, old school jazz tune called Wrap Your Troubles in Dreams to demonstrate this. This might be a standard that a lot of you have never heard of because it's so old, and it definitely lives in the more traditional style of jazz. But if you don't know this tune, it is excellent. And for the Patreon members, I am going to drop a link to the sheet music so that you can check out this tune and learn it if you would like. Okay, so the first idea is vertical versus horizontal. Now, we talked about this before on the show. Vertical playing is more based off of larger intervals. So think like arpeggios rather than scales. And horizontal is the exact opposite, where we're thinking a little bit more scale-based ideas instead of jumping around all over the place. This is my favorite way to sort of switch up my playing, and a good jazz player has both of these in their playing. So this is a 32 bar form, and what I'm going to do is for the first 16 bars, I'm going to think about horizontal scale-based ideas, smaller intervals, and then for the second 16 bars, so from the bridge going forward, I'm really going to think a lot more vertical. So see if you can hear the difference between the horizontal material and the vertical material. 16 bars of each. Here we go. All right, so hopefully you could hear the difference between those two ideas, vertical and horizontal. Number 2 is going to be an issue of how dense the solo is. So we want to think sparse, a sparsely populated solo, a lot of space, versus a lot more dense playing. Both of these forms of playing are very, very valid, and you're probably going to want to do them at different points in your solo. This is a great way to actively pursue those different textures, right? So I'm going to do the same thing. For the first 16 bars, I'm going to play very, very sparsely, leave a lot of space. And for the second 16 bars, the second half of the tune, I'm going to try to fill up a lot more of that space. So see if you could hear the difference between these two things, and this would be a great thing to practice in the practice room. All right, so there is sparse versus dense. Number 3 is going to be really, really working toward a motive-based solo, right? So come up with a motif at the beginning, either try to come up with it on the fly or actually write it down, and then do whatever you can to try to play an entire chorus that builds on that motif, that builds on that original idea, and see how interesting you can make it. This one's pretty tricky and really tests your knowledge of the chord changes, because you've got to take an idea and manipulate it through all the harmony in the song. Let me give it a try. I'm going to try to build off of a motif I play at the beginning of the chorus for the rest of the chorus. Here we go. Okay, and the last idea that we are going to talk about here is an interesting one that I don't think I've ever really presented on the podcast before, but this one might be the most challenging thing that you've ever done. It will really, really help you though. So this is going to be limiting yourself to a certain range on your instrument and still trying to play something interesting. So I am going to limit myself on the saxophone from a low E to a middle E, so 1 octave. And believe me when I tell you, this is so difficult because we're so used to going anywhere we want to on our instrument. This is a huge, huge constriction on your playing, but will get you so many results because you have to learn how to play something interesting just in this particular range. You could do an octave, you could do smaller than an octave. I wouldn't recommend going that far outside of an octave though, because then you're not really limiting yourself at all. So here is limiting myself to 1 octave. is tough, I gotta tell you. All right, so hopefully this will wrap things up kind of nicely for you, put a bow on this series, and give you some direction going forward. I know most of you out there, you understand all the technical stuff that I like to present on this podcast. Hopefully I explain it to you in a way that makes sense. It's the stuff going forward where it's a little bit open-ended, where you kind of have to make your own decisions that can really, really get you into trouble or pay off a lot. So that's what I was trying to do in this episode is give you something to think about in the practice room when things are a little bit more open-ended and the technical work is over. So let me know if you have any questions. You can always get in touch with me on the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook page, or you can drop me an email, 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. Thank you so much for tuning into this entire series. I really had a blast preparing it for you, and I'm looking forward to the next topic. We'll see you next week with our Lick of the Month episode. As always, hope you're doing well, staying safe and healthy, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.